Right now, I would like to invite Rabia, Tugce, it's very difficult to say your name. DC assistant professor at, it's you. Oh, great. Woman, refreshing. She is the assistant professor of DC in Boston University.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, great. I'm delighted to be here today to discuss from the hardware perspective, what are the challenges in the wireless security. I'm more of a hardware person. I'm not a security expert, but I'm sure we can discuss some of the challenges in the hardware space. I typically start my talks by discussing why is the IoT security is critical, but I guess if you're all here, I don't need to justify why it is important, so I will move on to some of the interesting parts of the talk. You are all aware of these type of attacks that are happening in every layer of the stack. And today we are going to look at why the IoT security is hard. The first constraint is the resources, right? We only have limited amount of battery-powered or energy harvesting devices, and they cannot do any complex computations, or they cannot also do sending and receiving large data packets. They're all very costly. That's the first constraint. And the second one is the massive scale of these devices. So you have to have efficient key management protocols, or you have to have user accessibility to be able to use these devices. So that's the second challenge to address in the hardware space and also at the protocol space. The third is the physical access. So this is a new attack surface. You can actually envision physically tampering these devices, and you can actually change the device internal. So that's a new attack surface that we have to handle. And the fourth, the last but not the least one, is the lack of standards. There is no common standard right now, and especially from the wireless perspective, typically we use Bluetooth Low Energy or Zigbee for these devices. They all have their own recommendations, but they are not either entirely secure or they have complexity that comes with their protocols. So today I'm going to discuss some of the work that has been done in the wireless security domain, from power authentication to securing wireless communications for Bluetooth Low Energy devices, and as well as wireless authentication tags. Counterfeiting is a major concern for the global supply chain management, and as you all know, is in the past years, multi-million-dollar losses have been associated with these counterfeited automated parts, aircraft parts, pharmaceutical drugs, right? So we need to have a tag that can be attached to these devices. But of course, now the tag itself is the new attack surface for the attackers. So in this work, we are looking at the embedded tags, and the attacks that we are concerned are the side channel attacks, and also fault injection type of attacks and power glitch attacks. So in terms of the side channel attacks, the concern we have is the differential power analysis attacks. For those of you who are not familiar with this attack, is the attacker collects several power traces that are measured from the chip, the tag itself, and if the device is using the same key every time, after some number of iterations, you can actually correlate that power traces with the subset of your key bits. So to protect against this, in this work, they use the same key twice. So there is a key update protocol associated with authentication. But now the challenge is this is a very simple tag, and it's typically passively powered through the reader. And during the key update protocol, if there's a power glitch attack, which means that you stop the operation, you cut the power supply, what happens, what you expect is tag either uses the same old key, or it basically does some of the computations for the new key again, that the attacker can still do a side channel attack against this one. So to protect against this, they have a non-volatile memory which backs up the state of the operation. So if you pause the operation, after you restart it, it continues seamlessly without needing to repeat any of the cryptographic computations again. So this is actually quite useful for authenticating most of those parts we discuss. And another work that's kind of interesting, but it has a different perspective, is authenticating wireless power. And compared to the earlier work, let me actually tell one challenge that remained in this one is you need a secure memory. You have to have the keys stored, right? So you need a secure memory on your tag, which is not really feasible going forward. But in this other work, they actually eliminate the need of a secure memory. So they use a public key protocol. And here the scenario is we have our devices that we want to wirelessly charge, but do you know if the charger is counterfeited or not? And it could be some of your life-critical IoT devices that you are charging. So against this one, typically they have been proposed solutions with the symmetric key protocols, but of course it's not really scalable, right? If you have a key that is stored for each charger that you might use, that's quite cumbersome for many devices. Or the other way could be having a master key that you have with your charger and all your receivers that you're trying to charge. But of course that creates a weak point. If you have a master key, the attacker can attack to that surface too. So in this work, they use the public key protocol. Charger is responding to the challenge by using its private key. And then the receiver, the device, the IoT device we are charging, actually uses the public key of the charger to verify the charger itself. And what's interesting here is this is one of the lowest energy on-chip authentications for a charger that is compared to most of the existing solutions in silicon. And last but not least, I'm going to a little bit into details of my own postdoc work at MIT, looking at securing Bluetooth low energy devices. And here are my collaborators, just to acknowledge them. And I will first start with defining the threat model we considered. This is called a selective attack. What is a selective attack? This is a real-world example of a selective attack. Marriott was fined $600,000 by FCC because they were blocking their customers' personal Wi-Fi spots, personal hotspots, to sell their customers their own Wi-Fi services. And why this is a selective attack? Because they're only targeting their customers who are staying at the hotel rather than everyone else. So in our scenario, we are interested in a particularly challenging wireless attack scenario called selective jamming. What is a selective jammer? Selective jammer has a single victim that is targeted while everyone around this device is communicating with no interruption in their service. So compared to broadband jamming, why the attacker can do this actually, attacker can maintain its deniability. So it's a very sneaky attack. It's very hard to catch the attacker because if you're only targeting one device rather than everyone else, it just looks like a packet loss over a poor wireless data link. And actually, Bluetooth low energy devices are vulnerable against these selective jamming attacks. Here we demonstrate an attack against Bluetooth low energy commercial devices, a fitness device and a headphone. And we are communicating with the Bluetooth low energy receiver, which is your cell phone. And on the top left corner, you see the attacker system, which is a very cheap system. And what it does is it selectively jams the fitness device's packets. You can see it here with the errors on the packet, while the headphone continues communication with no interruption in its service. And this could have been a serious attack if I was targeting BLE-enabled medical devices, not a fitness device or a headphone, of course. And why the Bluetooth low energy is vulnerable to these attacks? Because it has a slow hop period for their communication, and they actually leak the individual bit locations. So you can gain complete control over the data packet as well. So we propose a system-level solution that is utilizing devices at the physical layer together with new radio architectures all the way to the protocol level. Going forward, what's important is we have to start thinking about cross-layer optimization of these different layers to provide end-to-end security solutions. So the first challenge we are going to discuss is the slow hop period, and there are different challenges in each layer of the stack. What does the Bluetooth low energy does? It sends every packet on a single 1 megahertz frequency by staying there for 612 microseconds. Guess how much time for an attacker takes to locate that packet is only 1 microsecond. So the attacker has the rest of that 611 microseconds to jam the remainder of the packet. What we suggest against this is to do bit level hopping. So now you send every data bit, rather than your entire packet, on a single 1 megahertz frequency by staying there only for 1 microsecond. So by the time attacker localizes your frequency, you already move to a new frequency. So there is no time for the attacker to jam your data bits. And this is achieved by staying there for the minimum amount of time for you to communicate with your target receiver. That way you can move to the next channel. Of course, this is not easy because the conventional IoT devices changes their frequencies very slowly, and it's not possible with low power. I'm not going to go into details. I just want to emphasize one point. This is how we build the transmitters today, and they typically have a startup time in the order of a tens to the thousands of a microseconds to even start up that device to synthesize a frequency. So 1 microsecond is quite far from this number. So for this, we utilize new devices called bulk acoustic wave devices. These are piezoelectric devices to provide this fast startup time and be able to change frequencies faster. And this is basically the new way of building the transmitter. And of course, the challenge doesn't end. Now we are only getting 2 microsecond hopping. Why is that? Okay, you hopped a new frequency, but the hardware has to settle. There's a time associated with the settling time of the hardware, which we call the dead zones right at the gray points. To avoid that, we used time interleaving, like a ping pong architecture that you have 2 transmitter paths that are used in time interleaving fashion to avoid the dead zone and achieve 1 microsecond hopping. Before I end, I would like to actually show you the individual bit location predictability. So why it's possible to gain complete control over the packet. You are using a modulation scheme with your Bluetooth low energy devices. You have a fixed offset from the carrier to send a bit 1 or a bit 0. When the attacker localizes that carrier frequency, you know the fixed offset, so you can start selectively overriding the individual data bits in a packet. To avoid this, we propose a cryptographically secure, data-driven, random channel hopping selection scheme that actually depends on the current data bit, and it actually provides data encryption in the physical layer as well. From the attacker's point of view, attacker, even though if you reveal the entire history of transmitted hops, it doesn't know any of the future location of the bits. And it cannot do any better than random guessing. And let me tell you why it actually has data encryption in the physical layer. So transmitter at every hop selects 2 random channels, in this example, channel 4 and channel 31 for bit 1 and bit 0. And which channel you are sending the bit is where you put the energy in. Attacker, let's say, can see the energy in this channel, but it doesn't know if it's a bit 1 or a bit 0 without obtaining the secret key. So this provides additional data encryption. And these are all actually implemented on the hardware, tested and measured with the results. But just to summarize, this provides 600 times faster hop period than Bluetooth low energy packet level frequency hopping with unpredictable hopping sequence and unpredictable bit location. With that, I would like to thank you all for being here today.